What is next? Do you want my message? Because I was not hearing you completely, Neil. What do you want next? Okay. I'll do my message, okay? Here we go. I'm not hearing any of you because I guess you're all frozen in time. No, you're off audio. Okay, thank you. Here is a message. You received the title already, which is something like acknowledging that we are always the beginner. I am always a beginner. When I sit to meditate, I go back to the very earliest experiences. And what are the basics about life? Not only meditation, what are the basics about life? And what are the facts? This is a terrific conversation to have with people. What are the facts? That helped me enormously when a very wise person asked me when I was having issues. And that person asked me, well, what are the facts? And I was asked to talk about politics, and that is a very strong thing that I take to heart. But that is nearly impossible because that is what most people are thinking about. We have 2 days that most people are thinking about or have distanced their self from. That's what's driving our whole American society at this time. So I'm not going to shy away from any opportunities to improve my life or improve the lives of my family and friends. I regard everyone as a possible friend, unless or until I'm given a reason to feel otherwise. So I'm among friends. Now, this improvement that I want to have is not to change anything, but to point out alternatives. And I love the quote that Neil included with his message from John, the book of John. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. I will always believe that. But instead of talking about partisan politics this morning, I want to mention some things that are necessary as we move forward as a church, as a family, as a social gathering, as a community, as a country. And it will start with the basics. I asked rhetorically, what are the basics? Well, let's start with being well. What are the most basic needs of the body? Let's start there. The air we breathe. We can go for a couple of days without water. This is known. We can go for a couple of months without food. We can go much longer without shelter. You know, when I visited India many years ago, there was a mystic there who had spent 17 years or more on the banks of the Ganges River. No shelter. All year round. Well, he did it. Anyone could do it with the right will. Is it necessary? No. But he was without shelter for all those years. And some people are forced or forced themselves, ourselves, to go for years without affection. That's okay. We adjust. We adjust. But the air is necessary. Without oxygen, the brain is going to be damaged after about 8 minutes. So maybe you're looking for my reason for being the way I am. That was it. No response. Thank you. So the basic ideas about the breathing now, as we're sitting here, maybe you're holding some tension in your abdomen. So you can sit up straight and just let your belly go for a moment. Take a deep breath through the nose, hold it for a few seconds as comfortable, and then slowly release the air, and you will see how that one gesture can be very cleansing for the mind. You can release some stress that maybe you did not even know was there. Everyone has stress. You can't get around it, but you can get through it. Yes. So in mentioning this word politics, which disgusts most of us, it disgusts me too, but I need to know what it is. It is defined as the activities associated with the governance of a country or another area, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties having or hoping to achieve power. Okay, that's what it is. We don't have to go into anything partisan. We're not going to do it in this conversation either. In times of before the isolation in this pandemic, I might say to all of us as a group, let's look around the room. Well, we don't have a room. I have this. My friends are behind me, all my books and music. Now we can say, the next time you are in a setting with a variety of people around you, look for the diversity. Look at all the colors. Look at all the varieties of life experience. Put some of those lines in place. And when we look in the mirror, we are seeing lines put there by others. And we made those lines possible by our receptive attitudes over time. No one can force us to feel this way or another way about what is happening. We choose to feel those thoughts, feelings, and emotions that flow so freely through us. Sometimes it is painful to touch on subjects that cause conflict. It takes courage to take risks. It takes courage to come forward to speak. In the book of lists, many years ago, I read that the list of fears, the top 10 fears that people have, on the top of that list was standing up to speak to a group. That was a big one. Some of us have that fear, some of us do not. I have different fears. That one happens to be a love of mine. I like sharing my thoughts. I'm blessed in that way. But this speaking to a group is going to be necessary in some circumstances to help us advance and improve ourselves as a society. And those conflicts, sometimes they are painful, but they don't have to be injurious. I love this quote from Frederick Douglass. Those who profess to favor freedom, yet deprecate agitation, are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. So that was Frederick Douglass, the freed slave, the African-American abolitionist. His words will live forever, I think. And in speaking up now, this idea of courage, that's among the list of leadership qualities that I learned about many years ago. Some of you know, there are a couple of us at least who are veterans of the U.S. Army. I'm in that group. Well, one of them is courage. The courage to speak our minds can be very important. And I want to take a moment to read another quotation, if you don't mind. This is not going to run too long, I promise. I'm not going to read this whole book, holy moly. This is Ralph Waldo Emerson and his essays. Whoa, how am I doing this? Okay. Well, one of my favorite passages. I have not read this cover to cover, nor will I now. Aren't you relieved? Well, this is from his essay, Self-Reliance. It's just a half a column or so. See? To believe your own thought, to believe that what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men, that is genius. Speak your latent conviction, and it shall be the universal sense. For the inmost in due time becomes the outmost. And our first thought is rendered back to us by the trumpets of the last judgment. Familiar as the voice of the mind is to each, the highest merit we ascribe to Moses, Plato, and Milton is that they set at naught books and traditions, and spoke not what men, but what they thought. A man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes across his mind from within, more than the luster of the firmament of bards and sages. Yet he dismisses without notice his thought. Because it is his, every work of genius we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Great works of art have no more affecting lesson for us than this. They teach us to abide by our spontaneous impression with good humored inflexibility, then most when the whole cry of voices is on the other side. Else tomorrow a stranger will say with masterly good sense precisely what we have thought and felt all the time, and we shall be forced to take with shame our own opinion from another. Ralph Waldo Emerson. So let's speak up today. We don't have to do it contentiously. We can do it with good humor, with respect. Another idea is that sometimes we give up. We give up in a conversation because we don't want the conflict. And we hear some people say sometimes, well, whatever. No, not whatever. Not whatever. Let us re-enter with our own thought and say, well, how about this? If you don't want to confront, you ask the question, how about this point of view? Does this work for you? Does this give you another way of thinking about this issue? And then it becomes a dialogue. Then it becomes a dialogue. So if you hear something incorrect, for example, you don't have to say whatever. Well, I have also heard this. And then if you're accused of quoting something that is fake, that fake news phrase, it's an unfortunate phrase, I know. Well, there are many ways of checking facts, many, many ways. I won't go into a list here. I won't give you a laundry list, but there are so many. You can search these things. How do I know that news is real? Because what happens if we start to distrust everything in the world? Then there's nothing left. Then there's nothing to talk about. But we do have plenty to talk about. We're going to stay positive about all these changes too. We're going to continue the conversations. I entered a conversation the other day with a couple of people that I believe were on the other side of the political line that we don't all dislike so much right now. And I said, well, wait a minute, do you have a source for that? And the person said, well, I was having a private conversation here. And I said, well, yes, but you were speaking audibly enough that I could hear you, so I thought I could contribute. And that sort of opened the door a little bit. And then we sort of lessened our tensions and we exchanged a few more sentences. I did not change any opinions, but I did open the subject of how do we know news is real? So you look into that. Get into conversations with people. They're rare enough with this isolation. So with courage are some other leadership qualities, and we do not have to be in positions of leadership in order to appreciate that it is important to have positive mental attitudes, to have character that is praiseworthy, that we're confident in, compassion, having compassion with people, not in a haughty way, not in a superior way, as if to say, oh, I feel sorry for that person. No, we can say, well, I recognize some qualities over there that I might have myself. So I will have compassion. I will feel with that person's emotions. And being competent, when we talk about some of these issues, do I have the facts? Do I really feel able to talk about these things without stirring up unpleasantness? Will I be competent in presenting my ideas? That's an important thing. And that takes practice too. Competence, confidence, courage. Those all go together, I believe. We're always going to see conflict. It's moving around all the time. But we can allow the conflict to resolve itself. One of my favorite tools for resolving conflict is with my own practice of yoga. Maybe you don't practice yoga, but you do have a body to exercise. So you stretch this way and you stretch that way and you start to move and you stir up some thoughts. It may not be exactly the kind of exercise technique that you remember. I remember a body that was much younger when I first started in gymnastics many years ago. But I don't do those gymnastics moves anymore. Now I'm an old yoga guy, and I have to enjoy that, which I do, thankfully. But restoring balance in the body first is very important. So as I call back the idea of good breathing, when we get ready to meditate later, I suggest we breathe in and we release the breath, and you try for equal time, that few seconds, equal time inhale, equal time exhale, nice and smoothly. So I'm giving the suggestion now so that we can have later. We refresh it, we plant the seed in the mind. And meditation is going to be very important. And I'm going to come to the close with the point here, another quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "Finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day." So this will include my remarks for today. I know they may be a little short, but I think that the ideas presented can last a long time as we reconsider having dialogue with our fellow humans. What is next, my good friends?